Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to another episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast presented by Menards. I'm your good host, Colby Evans here, and I'm happy to say that the 2022 season is here. We just had our first race of the main ARCA season at Daytona. Obviously, we had the first ARCA race of the season last week, but this is the main series debut at Daytona. What a wacky, weird, but somewhat weird race. I would say the finish kind of obviously took away from it, but we'll obviously get to all that later in the show. But overall, I thought it was a great race and definitely did not deserve a lot of the hate that it got. But anyway, let's kick the quid intro and then we'll get started. As, of course, follow your boy at Start and Park Car on Twitter. Check out my new blogs that I've uploaded, the ARCA Racing Report and the Backmarker Battles Report, all on blogspot.com. They're down in the description below. Check them out, would be much appreciated. Follow our friends at arcaracing.com. at ARCA_racing, or just go visit ARCAracing.com in general. And, of course, the man himself, Brad Smith, at Driver Brad Smith on Twitter and Driver Brad Smith on Instagram. Go follow him. All right, so let's get into the race. I thought it was a good race overall. I really didn't find any problems with it from the beginning. The entry list was my most happiest part, honestly, of this race. We had our biggest entry list since 2018, which was the year, ironically, where we debuted the Gen 6 body composite style that NASCAR had been, that ARCA hadn't been running yet or debuted on the super speedways. They had 39 back in 2018. Believe they had 36 in 2019, and then we had 33 in 2020. We had 35 last year, and then we had 37 again this year. Unfortunately, we did have a withdrawn entry, as I mentioned on my Twitter. The Young's Motorsports entry, which were at the test, so it makes you think maybe did a sponsor fall through? Did the driver not get approved? But despite appearing at Daytona testing, Chuck Walker and the Young's Motorsports team did not show up at the ARCA race. They were not even there. It's not like they were at the track and withdrew. They were actually just not there, period. So who knows what happened. Either way, that still left us with 36 good cars, a great field, which included some young kids as young as 18, and some people as old as 79-year-old Benny Chastain. So, again, that's what's the lovable part of the ARCA field. We had some really, really fun storylines coming into this race. Of course, I had previously mentioned Brian Caltrider, after losing everything in his race shop in a fire in 2018, is back. Didn't appear that the car had an Ilmore engine. It just kind of had maybe a legacy motor. Brian was not that fast, and I knew he was not going to be that fast. You know, it was the first time at Daytona. Might have been lifting in the corners just a tad bit, which is probably why he was so slow in the first practice session. But no matter where Brian finished, no matter how fast he was, it was just great to see a man who lost all of his race equipment. I mean, every single thing in that fire, every single in that garage was killed by the fire. Every single piece of his racing equipment gone. And from the ground up, got his equipment back. Didn't get it back, but he got more of it, and was able to return to the track. So that was kind of the sentimental story. And I really wish Fox would have maybe done a preview on it, because that would have tugged the heartstrings of a lot of underdog fans. Peterson Motorsports, as you all know, old Wayne Peterson, had 2 entries for the first time since 2017. We have confirmed that the white chassis that Zachary Tinkle had driven was CGR 211, driven by David Stremme in 2006 at Talladega. And that the white Ford was, as I previously mentioned, Bill Davis Racing 65, built in 2003. So, obviously, Peterson Motorsports with old cars, what's new, So, either way, it was pretty cool to see Wayne show up with the amount of cars that he did, and for both of them to be full race cars and really have no issues until the end of the race. Some other fun stories we had in the field, of course, was the 29, withdrawing the number 8, running number 29, the Bob Keselowski throwback for Empire Racing. Very special tribute, very fun. Very glad that Sean Core and that team not only ran as well as they did, like they got the car on TV, and I'm happy they did that. And coming into this race, we didn't know how well the car would run, but obviously we knew that Richmond Racing was back and that they had a DGR piece running at Daytona. But boy, we did not know just how good this car was going to be, and we were all shocked by the end of the race with how well Tim Richmond was running, but we'll get to that, of course, later in the show. Some of the final storylines, sentimental storylines we had coming into the race. Gerhart Racing, the Bobby Gerhart team, was back at Daytona again with the quarter man, Dale Quarterly. That was pretty cool to see. They had a good run. Dale, was that his first start at Daytona? I don't know if anyone in the chat could correct me. I don't know if Dale had previously made a start at Daytona, but it was just good to see the Bobby Gerhart team back after so long away. Obviously, with Bobby's health issues, forced into retirement, probably, I'd say Bobby still had another 5 to 10 years. Despite Bobby, I believe, at that point being in his 60s, I would still say Bobby was going to run well into his 70s if he had the money and he had the chance to. And then, of course, our final storyline was the infamous chassis CGR 005. As you guys know, the famed chassis that was involved in the fatal crash that took Dale Earnhardt from us. That Sterling Marlin was driving that day. It was built in 1999. Made its first start in the 2000 season. I believe did it run the Daytona 500 or did it start at Talladega? But that car entered its 22nd year of service, driving as the number 30 for Amber Balkin last Saturday. So really cool effort. And again, a story I really wish Fox would have mentioned, because I really think it would have brought a cool landscape to the ARCA series, being like, whoa, look at that. A 23-year-old race car that has that kind of history behind it and has somehow just made its way into the ARCA division without nothing. So really wish it would have been promoted, but obviously, what are you going to do? You can't ask for everything. So we finally got to our practice session, and obviously, it was obvious from the start, Venturini was going to be the team to beat. And that's kind of the same every year. It's been about that way ever since 2018 when we debuted these new bodies, that Venturini had the funds to make these cars as just powerful as possible. Even the almighty Joe Gibbs Racing, now Kyle Busch Motorsports ARCA team, is just no match. Because at the end of the day, it's 1 versus 4. And with these ARCA cars, man, how hard it is to pass, how hard it is to draft, you really got to have your teammates or you got to have a friend set up and ready to go to be able to beat these Venturini cars. And as we saw last Saturday, it just wasn't going to work. Practice results easily showed Venturini the team to beat, sweeping the top 4 positions with Tony Breidinger, the only full-time driver for Venturini this season, winning practice, but just by 0.04 of a second. Her teammate Parker Chase was in second, Corey Heim was in third, and Gustine was in fourth. Ironically enough, the Joe Gibbs Racing, now Kyle Busch Motorsports ARCA team, was fifth. Practice ranged from differing speeds, obviously. The cars were pretty close together. I would say really from first to 31st was only separated by about 2 seconds. And you're normally going to get that in a practice session, ranging from cars that can draft perfectly, from cars that have trouble drafting and maybe need a car behind them to be able to keep them up in the draft. And then you had the cars that I kind of knew had no shot of keeping up in the draft and were pretty much out there to, well, be out there. And that was, of course, the Peterson entries of Zachary Tinkle, Con Nicolopoulos, our man Brad Smith, who was running his new engine from Ken Schrader, and, of course, Brian Caltrider. Tinkle and Brad Smith being over 5 seconds off, Nicolopoulos being over 7 seconds off, and Caltrider being over 8 seconds off. But I will give Brian a pass because I do believe this was his first time at Daytona, and it can be a little intimidating. Would not be shocked if Brian maybe lifted in the corners for his first couple laps at Daytona. I'm sure everyone has done that. You know, and Brian's not even a young guy either. So not only you want to make sure the car can hold up, you also want to make sure you don't hurt yourself. So But I knew they would probably go a little bit faster in qualifying once they got all the bugs worked out. And sure enough, they did. Some other notables in the field that qualified, that practiced good was Andy Jankowiak, of course, running his Ken Schrader car, so you knew he was going to be fast. Max Gutierrez in a second Rhett Jones entry was surprisingly fast in practice, qualifying 7th. And, of course, our man Dave Mader, old 66-year-old Dave Mader, 12th quickest. But, of course, we know the Jeff Spraker Racing Team always brings a good car to the track. We all know that. Qualifying would actually hold up kind of the same. As you know, ARCA qualifying does their group qualifying, but it's not how you think it is. It's not the way that NASCAR did it. They actually do it in groups, depending on the field size, obviously, groups ranging from 5 to 6 cars. And basically, you didn't want to get caught in the group that had cars like the 0, the 06, the 48, or the 07, mainly because no matter how hard those cars tried, they just couldn't keep up in the draft. They would need a car behind them to get them up to the speed, and then they could go that fast. Because as we've seen before, the 06, even with the legacy motor, that car can reach speeds of 185 miles per hour. It just needs a car behind it to stay with it long enough for the car to get up to that speed. Because I remember when Tim Richmond ran that car in testing, it ran over 180 miles per hour. Just needed someone behind him to stay tucked in behind him and committed for that long. But unfortunately, with a car that goes that slow, it's hard to make that commitment. But yeah, qualifying would fare a lot better for other groups. The Venturini team, as we saw, again, just no chance of beating them. 3 of the 4 Venturini cars ended up getting in the same group of Group 3. Brian Doza went out in Group 1 and managed to hold on to the pole through the second group. But by the time Group 3 had come in, they beat the 57 of Doza by over a second. Very impressive as there was only 3 of them running together, and the other cars behind them were not. I don't know if they were keeping up. Again, I wasn't there, unfortunately. I didn't watch qualifying, obviously, because it wasn't televised. So, but it was shocking to see that just 3 Venturini cars running by themselves were over a second faster than 5 cars running by themselves. Really shows you, man, just how much Venturini puts into this race and how competitive his equipment really is. In 4th was Mason Diaz. Now, I had seen some reports that this actually was an Andy Hillenberg entry, and if that's the case, that's awesome. But also, I believe that this was from the Farrier McClure Racing Team. But as we saw last season, they did form a partnership with Andy Hillenberg for Stephanie Moyer to use the 44 back at Bristol last season. So it's possible we saw the exact same case. Did the car come from Andy, though? Or did the car come from Farrier McClure? Either way, a very impressive effort by Mason Diaz to qualify as high as he did. Sean Corn, the Bob Keselowski tribute, qualified 5th. Greg Van Alst was 6th. Tim Richmond in the DGR Toyota car started 7th. Amazing qualifying effort for that car, but obviously it's not shocking because that car was a beast at DGR, and it's great to see it has a new home. Big man Willie Mullins was 8th. Andy Hillenberg driver Chuck Hears was 9th, and of course Drew Dollar was 10th. As I mentioned before, the slower cars that I had previously mentioned did manage to pick up the pace quite a bit. Zachary Tingle picked it up into the 53-second brackets, while Braden Kahn picked it up into the 54-second brackets, and even Brian Caltrider picked it up over a second from his practice time, showing us that he probably was lifting in the corners, and by qualifying time had become a lot more comfortable with the track. But definitely coming into Saturday, it was very clear that to win this race, you had to not only beat, but outsmart the Venturini Racing Team. And that was not going to be an easy task, as they had a little something up their sleeve, which has kind of become, low-key, a common theme over the past couple of years. So going into the race, Corey Heim, we knew that he was probably going to be the fastest of the 4 Venturini cars. He led the field to the green flag. Of course, we had Jamie Little. I believe our commentators were Jamie Little. Yeah, Jamie Little, Phil Parsons, and Chase Briscoe was on commentary. And I thought Phil and Chase did a great job. I think Jamie Little can go a long way as a commentator. She just needs maybe another season. I really hope we see more progression out of her. I saw a lot of progression from her in 2021, and I want to see that same progression in 2022. My only thing is that she just needs to be a little bit faster when it comes to announcing drivers, announcing like storylines and stuff. She's really fast at that on pit road. But I'm noticing that in the booth, she's struggling a little bit. And Phil kind of has to carry it. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that's noticed that, but I feel like that's just my opinion of what I've seen. Either way, our field came to green. But right at the start, a lot of people, including I, noticed it. The 03 of Braylon Laster, a teammate to Willie Mullins, driving a Willie Mullins car, didn't get going at all on the start. I don't know if he missed a gear or just wasn't paying attention. Probably just missed a gear. I mean, I like Braylon. He's a cool guy. So I would imagine he might have just missed a gear. If Braylon, if you ever watch this, leave a comment. I'd like to know actually what happened to you. But he didn't get going. And unfortunately, due to the beginning cars getting such a launch over the cars in the rear of the field, by the time the first lap had ended, we were already extremely spread out. I would say about half the track from first place Corey Heim to last place Brian Caltrider already was about, I would say, almost half the racetrack. That's how bad it was. That's how bad this field got spread out. And a lot of people I saw were crapping on it already. I'm like, come on, guys. Stuff like this can happen on the start. Braylon's a rookie. Cut in some slack. Braylon is a rookie. Cut him some slack. But I guess people think that just because you drive an ARCA, you got to be perfect on restarts. Kid's a rookie. It was probably one of his first restarts he's ever done. It's the first time he's ever done a start at Daytona. Give him a break. So I cut Braylon some slack. I'm like, you know what? It's fine. You're a rookie. I understand it. And you know what? Braylon didn't screw up any restarts after that. So for all the hate that 03 got at the start was really uncalled for. He's a rookie. Cut him some slack. But the field ran very, very clean. Obviously, with the field being as spread out as it was, we didn't see really any close racing. Although the front pack had kind of, run stabilized. They were really jockeying for position. The rear of the field was something else. Man, I'd say 15th on back. Those guys were doing 3 wide, 2 wide, racing the crap out of each other. And my mind was, get in line. Because if you don't get in line, you can't run down the lead pack. So I didn't quite understand what they were doing, running 3 wide by themselves when they could be running down the lead pack of cars. It was kind of frustrating, but, everyone by lap 15, 20 got themselves in line, especially when we started to lap cars. It was around lap 10 or 11, I believe, when we started lapping Caltrider, Brad and Kahn, who had been running together, and then, of course, eventually Zachary Tinkle. So those guys went a lap down, but then after lap 21, we had our first crash of the evening, or of the day, I guess, not the evening. There's number 7 of Eric Caudell. And the CCM racing team did not really have the best luck at Daytona. As we saw, Steve Austin had a lot of issues at the New Smyrna race, which it seemed issue after issue after issue kept plaguing the 22 team. And then they went to Daytona, and unfortunately, it looked like Eric had lost either a left rear or a right rear tire. And in the corners at Daytona, you're going to go flying. Not in the air, but you're going to go flying either into the wall or into the infield. And unfortunately, Eric made contact with the wall, and that cut his day short, which was a shame because Daytona bug has really bitten Eric the last couple years, not giving that team any luck whatsoever, which is a shame because Eric works so hard, and I really hope he gets better luck. So that brought out the caution, and I was a little judgmental because Eric was able to get the car back to the pits. Eric was able to get the car back to the pits, not leaving much damage at all on track, leaving hardly any debris. but we were still under caution for so long. Even before what happened before the restart, we were still under caution, I feel like a lap or two too long. It's been one of my only criticisms about ARCA. For a car that can make it back to the pits, we don't need 5 laps of caution. We can at maximum have 3 or 4. So Eric makes it back to the pits. Unfortunately, the car is retired, and we're supposed to be coming to 1 to go when all of a sudden, some of the cars, like the Venturini cars, like Sanchez, Carruth, a lot of the guys who were running at the middle of the field decided to pit. And, well, they guess they wanted their spots back in line, and the other competitors wouldn't give them back to them. So here we are, coming to 1 to go, and we're 3 wide at 70 miles per hour. It's kind of a funny sight to see. ARCA racing 3 wide at Daytona at 70 miles per hour. Nobody wanted to get in line. And it took them, I think, a good 2 laps to finally get in line. But the Nick Sanchez team still was not in line. And they threw the green flag anyway, with the 2 car still on the top groove all by himself, 3 wide. I'm like, you know what? I understand it. Let's just let him roll. And, Phil Parsons on commentary rightfully called out a penalty, but that was later rescinded after it was found out that the 2 was supposed to be, I believe, either in front or behind the 43, and the 43 would not allow him to get in. Some people were calling for both cars to get penalized, but obviously if the 2 doesn't get penalized, then likely I guess the 43 shouldn't either. I don't know. Some laps had just passed by, and I'm guessing the officials just kind of let it slide. If something like this had happened again, obviously more action would have been taken. I think we can all understand that. But with the left 40 break coming very quickly, obviously even I knew that the field was not going to push it, unless you're the guys who had the legacy motors, who couldn't hang in the lead draft. You weren't going to get lapped in 12 laps if your car was capable of running at least 170, 173. And that's how most of the field did. They lagged way back, just kind of ran their own race, logged laps. We had some new people at the front of the field, though, with the Venturini cars pitting. That actually left Sean Core taking the lead, but only for 6 laps. Although Sean hung out, was pushed to the lead on the restart, he was only able to hold it for just 6 laps before the mighty Corey Heim and his teammate Parker Chase were able to get out in front, and they would not look back. Even coming to the halfway break, Venturini cars pitted again, but this time it was modified live pit stops, so I don't think anyone would lose their position. And the Venturini cars lined up out front, and this was the first kind of telltale sign of what I was seeing. That the Venturini cars, the 15, just for some reason, on every restart that they restart on the front row, would not go. Or he would go, but he would go just enough to let the 15 go in front of him. And I'm like, okay, we've seen that before. We have seen that before on the tracks where, teammates work together, make sure they can hug the bottom line together. And we'll get to that criticism more in a little bit as the restarts came on, but it's the first time I kind of noticed that. I mean, I saw that on the start with Gus Dean and Corey Heim, but I didn't know if the 15 would do the same thing. So we came back from the break, but just 4 laps later, we had probably the most infamous moment of the race. Some clean racing, and then on lap 46, God, I'm getting my words mixed up. 46, we had an unfortunate incident off of turn 2, the 97 of Jason Kitzmiller wrecking his second vehicle of Speed Weeks. He had wrecked his 97 truck 2 days earlier on Thursday in truck practice, withdrawing that truck from the field and damaging his 97 ARCA car in the process as well, and sadly taking out Will Kimmel, who was making his first plate start and running the returning number 68 for the first time in almost 5 years. It was really sad because I just wanted Will to finish. And, Will's one of those guys, he busts his ass. Him and Bill Kimmel bust their asses, and it's just like they get no luck. And it's really sad because we're all ARCA fans here. We love the Kimmels. I have never met anyone who has a bad thing to say about Frank Kimmel, Will Kimmel, Frankie Kimmel, or Bill Kimmel. I love all of them. They're great guys. I met Frank Kimmel the first time when I was 7 years old, and I met Frank Kimmel. And now I'm seeing him in the ARCA garage, and he just says hi, and I say hi. He's the best. So I really hated it for Will Kimmel because he's also been a kind of a friend. We're friends at the track. I always say hi to him. I always say hi to Bill when I can. They're always busy. You know, those guys are always busy, and I really hated to see Will get caught up. I didn't think it was too much damage, but when they showed the replay, it showed that there was quite a bit of damage, and sure enough, both cars were retired from the race. Some other storylines that I had forgotten, actually. 2 cars had actually went many, many laps down in the race. The 32 of Max Gutierrez, who I did mention was very fast in practice, showed a very fast, promising car. It appeared that he was either having alternator issues or ignition issues. Something wasn't right with the car. And he made either 2 or 3 trips to pit road in the garage area. And although on commentary, Jamie Little said that the car was done for the day, a couple laps later, the 32 actually comes back out on track and does actually end up finishing the race. Spoiler alert, he actually did finish the race in 32nd, 17 laps down. Another car was the 94 Bryce Hodgsberg. It was a leftover car from the Dawson Cram team. And I don't recall, they never mentioned what the issues were for that team. And I don't know if it was ever mentioned on Twitter. Not sure what the issue was, but they went 19 laps down, but did finish the race in 33rd. But again, going back to the lap 46 incident, then we had the infamous ARCA brakes segment with Dave Mader. And this is the term ARCA brakes. For anyone who doesn't know, who still doesn't know, ARCA brakes is the term where we have a crash, but behind the crash, an ARCA driver does not brake. He doesn't slow down. He just tries to maneuver his way through there at full speed. And 90% of the time, what happens? He absolutely clobbers a crashing vehicle at just full speed. While the meme itself is kind of funny, it's actually really scary. And it's something a lot of people have said needs to be addressed. But at the end of the day, it's hard because you can tell someone to slow down, but that person behind the wheel is the person behind the wheel. They can only make that mistake. So that's my criticism of it. But at the end of the day, it's still a funny meme. It still is. Come on. It is. And the 63 just would not slow down. He kept shunting and shunting and shunting. Poor Gus Dean. And eventually, the 55, the 35, and the 73 all came together in turn 3 and 4, and we're like, what the heck is going on? It was madness. It was crazy. None of those 4 cars, though, were fortunately not totaled. The worst damage coming for the 55 of Gus Dean, who both of his front fenders were seriously scuffed up. All 4 cars were continued, but it was kind of a funny meme. We're like, Dave, slow down. Oh, that's what I love about the old guys of ARCA. They're the best. But yeah, unfortunately, it took out Will and Jason. And even then, that caution only took 6 laps. We went back to green on lap 57, just 23 laps to go. So at this point, we were really getting down to the thick of things. And unfortunately, after 1 lap, we had another debris caution, which was really getting annoying because I'm like, I don't want to waste laps. I want to be able to have time for a good finish. They didn't spend too much time. They did spend about 5 laps on it, which left us with 18 laps to go. And I'm like, okay. I saw this restart, and it went just the same as the restart from lap 56 to now lap 62. The 15 was letting the 20 get down. And by this point, I was really starting to get frustrated because, try to win the race, like I understand the orders. I understand, it's been done many times in the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series. But this is Daytona, man. And my frustrations would only get bigger towards the end of this race. But it's just like Parker Chase was doing what he was told and letting the 20 down in every single time. So we finally got some racing action going with 18 laps to go. The field had gotten spread out again, but there was another pack of cars. We had about 8 or 9 cars in the lead draft. Then we had about another 8 behind them, about a second and a half, 2 seconds behind them. They ran them down, and man, we were just shaping up to have an incredible finish. And I mean an incredible finish. I think probably one of the better finishes that we were going to get for an ARCA race. Because as they were catching the lead draft, we were catching lap cars. I thought we were about to see a melee big one. And unfortunately, luck was not on our side for us fans. The Bruce Cook Racing team had more bad luck. The crash at New Smyrna was not the only bad luck deal. It appeared on racingreference.info that they had a transmission issue, and he was slow on the apron. I had actually mentioned that about 3 laps before the caution itself had come out, that there was a car slow on the apron and it might bring out a caution. Then we later saw, with 5 laps to go, the 69 of Scott Melton, the second Kimmel entry, having issues as well, slowing on track. And unfortunately, despite me and a lot of other fans wanting to keep it green, the caution came out with just 5 laps to go. And as we know, ARCA's overtime rules are just 1 lap. They're not 2 laps. So that left these teams, you really got to get a good restart, or man, you're just not going to have the time. So the one thing I would say I do like about the 1 lap overtime, you cannot screw up the restart. If that 15 or that 20 had screwed up the restart, they made that restart perfect, but if either one of them had screwed that up, who knows what would have happened. But either way, we came down to our white and green flag together. And to me, again, the frustrating part, not the 1 lap procedure, but the 15 letting the 20 get down. And at this point, I was getting a little upset. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is for a win at Daytona. If I'm Parker Chase, man, screw the team orders. Go for the win. But before this happened, we had, in my opinion, the underdog story of the year. I don't think anything is going to top this unless he can actually win a race. Before we get to my opinions on Venturini doing that and then the finish, Tim Richmond ran the race of his career. Now, this car, we knew this car was good. This was a good car. This wasn't just a lucky guy getting up there. This was a car that could have won the race. This was a very fast car. I believe this was the same car that Noah Gragson or Natalie Decker had ran for DGR in 2019 when this team was still a Toyota team. And it was a good car. Really was a good car. And Tim was running in the top 5, I think ever since lap 20 or 30, just running around the top 5. And by the time we had hit that last restart with 18 laps to go, Tim was 3rd. And he was still 3rd. With that 5 laps to go, he was running 3rd on track. And then the biggest disappointment of them all, it was either 1 to go, I think it was coming to 1 to go, or the green flag, 27 came to pit road. And I think the funniest part was that the commentators were hyping up Tim Richmond running 3rd. And then they point the camera shot to Tim on pit road, and you get their natural reactions like, oh, crap, he's on pit road. And, man, what heartbreak, man. I love Tim. He's one of my favorite guys. David Richmond's one of my best friends at the track, and it just utter heartbreak is what I can say. But to the Richmond Racing, do not be disappointed. They knew you were there. They knew you were there. Man, it was so disappointing because at the worst, Tim was probably going to finish no worse than 5th. He was not going to finish any worse than 5th, which would have been a great day for them in the owner's points and for the driver's points, even though they're not actually full-time. Either way, owner's points are owner points, and you want to be in that top 20 come the end of the season. So that was heartbreaking. So let's go back to the restart. Then the middle line, this low lane moved up a slot. And like I said, the 15 once again getting the 20 down. Now again, you can say, oh, the 15 just didn't get a good restart. Well, then fine then. How come the 15 wasn't getting a good restart for like 4 times in a row? They made it down to the back straightaway. 20 was still leading. 15 was behind him. When all this, I don't know, remember who hooked him? Drew Dollar, just massive crash. Like, man, I tell you, it makes you wonder, like these Cup cars, the Cup cars are very safe. The Xfinity cars, very safe. Truck Series, very safe. Sometimes we really take into question, are these ARCA cars as well prepped? Even the higher budget ARCA cars, are they as well prepped? And it was really good to see Drew Dollar walk out of that crash. It was very surprising. We did not get a caution. Very surprising to me we didn't get a caution. Drew hit, and I mean, he hit hard. For an ARCA crash, this is probably about as bad of a crash as you can get. I know we all rank on Drew Dollar. We really give Drew Dollar a lot of hate, but we never want to see a driver get hurt. And that's for any fan. I'm not a Denny Hamlin fan. You think I ever want to see him get hurt? No. We might not be the biggest Drew Dollar fan, but we do not want him to get hurt. That's the number one thing. So it was really good to see him get out of that car. And as we saw in pictures of the aftermath, man, what a hit that was. I don't know if that car is killed, but it might not be running again this year, or maybe it as a backup car. Meanwhile, they left the race green, as I said, coasted around to the front of the flag, and Corey Heim for the 2nd year in a row, and I believe Venturini's 5th win in a row, takes the checkered flag. Venturini gets 1, 2. Gus Dean managed to make it up to 5th, and despite her dragging the brake a lot of the race, which was kind of funny, pointed out on TV, Tony Breidinger ended up 9th. All 4 Venturini cars in the top 10. Corey Heim gets another win for Venturini. Not a scratch on the car. Daniel Dye comes home 3rd. Sean Corr, who I'll give Sean Corr a lot of credit. He really tried to get down. If you guys watch that restart, he tried his best to scrunch his way in there. Unfortunately, just would not work. And Sean had to settle for a 4th place finish. Still, the tribute was amazing. Go check out Brian Keselowski's Twitter. It's really emotional seeing those pictures of Brian standing next to the very paint scheme that he was standing next to almost 30 years ago. And he has the same picture posted on his Twitter. So if you guys want to see something emotional, go check out Brian Keselowski's Twitter. The picture will give you just, if it doesn't bring you to tears, I don't know who you're not human. Let's just put it like that. It's a very tearful, heartfelt, awesome picture. Our man Andy Jankowiak from the crash managed to get back up to 6th. Mason Diaz was 7th. Old man Mater, our boy, was 8th. Tony Breidinger, as I mentioned, was 9th. And Ryan Huff, he was kind of quiet throughout the day, but Ryan Huff managed a solid top 10 effort for his self-owned team. Quarterman Dale Quarterly was 12th. Raja Karuth was actually 11th. Some other notables, Amber Balkin, who was part of the Busch program full-time drivers, was 16th. Tim Richmond was the last car on the lead lap in 18th. Drew Dollar, despite wrecking on the last lap, was still credited with 19th place. And, of course, Nick Sanchez, one of the other notable championship contenders, was stuck a lap down from a previous incident early in the race, finishing 20th. Overall, I actually thought it was a good race. A lot of people actually coined it as one of the worst ARCA races at Daytona. And I just want to say this. What did you watch? I thought it was better than last year's race. I really thought that was better than last year's race, honestly. And I think then part of it was the broadcasting. We can all agree the Fox broadcast for this ARCA race was definitely not the best. It was not the commentator's fault. It's like the Mike Joy situation. Mike Joy is an amazing commentator. It was not his fault that the Daytona 500 broadcast was underwhelming. Same here. Did not enjoy seeing a commercial every 6 laps. Did not enjoy all the onboard cameras. That was not for me personally. I don't blame the commentators. I blame the Fox Sports. That's just my personal opinion. I think that's what made this race seem bad in people's eyes. The race itself, when you look at it, was actually a really good race. By ARCA standards, this was a good race. This really was. You won't find many negative comments. The negative comments about this race you'll see online are from people who just love to crap on ARCA and don't even give it a chance. The race was actually good. Good to see you in the chat, Moff. But the race itself was good. It made me so angry seeing so many people bury this race when it was actually really, really good. I mean, it makes me angry that people will just crap all over ARCA when if you watch the damn race, you'll see that it was really good. Yes, was the battle for the lead all not entertaining? You're right. But you cannot tell me that the battles from 8th to 30th were not entertaining. 3 wide, 2 wide, going back and forth, drafting. It was entertaining. If the broadcast had just shown it. That's the problem. When you only show the first 8 cars and not the rest of the field, it looks boring. But from friends who were there, from friends I had who were there on pit road and in the stands, they said it was a very, very entertaining race. And I wish we could get a video upload of the entire race from the grandstands so I could prove to people ARCA is good. Really made me angry to see a lot of people crap on this race. And I'm sorry to go into that rant, but the amount of hate I got for saying that ARCA race was good made me mad. And I even posted a poll on my Twitter. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick, but I've made a lot of tweets since then. But I'll just say this. I put out a poll saying, was the ARCA race great, good, bad, or awful? Bad won. And I just want to say to those people who voted bad, did you actually watch the race, or did you just vote bad because it was bad? It was not a bad race. It was not I wouldn't even say it was a great race. It was a good race. What you're going to get out of ARCA in this day and age, that was a good race. So I'm sorry to rant, guys, but that really made me mad. I thought this was a good race. Genuinely believed. With the stories we had, if the broadcast had just decided to, focus more than the top 5, or especially Tony Breidinger, too, they wouldn't stop mentioning her, too, we might have had a better broadcast for people to enjoy. Off in the chat, the only thing I would change in ARCA is the overtime rule. I can see your understanding from that. I don't really get into that. That's one thing we can't change. I like the overtime rule. I don't think it works at tracks like Daytona. We have a 1-lap rule, like I say, like a Bristol. Yeah, that could work. It just depends on where that 1-lap rule is kind of at. But I think it does work in Daytona in certain aspects. Certain aspects of Daytona is where that, 1-lap rule works. So I actually like the overtime rule. That's just my opinion, though. People, of course, are entitled to their own opinions. Moff in the chat, yeah, we actually did mention about Braylon Laster's start issues. But anyway, some other notable finishes in the field. Greg Van Alst, who, of course, was involved in that crash with Mater and Dean from the ARCA breaks, he didn't recover, only finished 22nd. For the Andy Hillenberg fans, the official Andy Hillenberg entries finished 15th, 17th, 23rd, and 25th. I know a lot of people really ragged about Benny Chastain. Benny Chastain, 79 years old. Would he junk the car? I knew he wouldn't. Benny, He tried. He got up a little bit, but he held his line pretty good. I think he had my buddy John Schultzke as a spotter. And, man, when John's on the call, you ain't going to screw up. If you guys are wondering, Con Nicolopoulos on this restart was actually reported by my friend Spencer Gogol on Twitter that they actually broke an axle coming to the last restart. And that is why the Zero finished 29th when they probably should have finished around 26th. They broke an axle on the start and kind of just had to limp the car around the track just for the one lap. Our man Brad Smith finished 28th. Brian Caltrider, and I told you in the emotional return, finished 27th. And a very solid finish, in my opinion, for rookie Zachary Tinkle, 24th. Very, very solid effort by the Peterson Motorsports team. That white Chevrolet, man, is just one heck of a car. It is a workhorse machine, and that car deserves a video someday, whether I make it, whether Brock Beard makes it, whether NASCAR Man makes it, whether all three of us make it. That car is legendary, and it's just one of the reasons why I will forever miss the old chassis being used in the Cup Series. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of the next gen, but again, I still love this series with a passion, and it's for reasons like that. Using old cars that are over 20 years old, 15 years old, and they're still going today. Off in the chat, what happened to Caldwell? It was obviously Fox didn't report it, but it was either a rear tire failure. I'm not sure if it was right rear or right left or right rear. It was a rear tire failure, which sent him into the wall. Either way, though, like I said, out of a grade of 10, everyone who's watching right now in the chat, please tell me your grade out of 10 for this race. I give it a 7.5. And the reason why I only get a 7.5, a lot of that comes from the broadcast. A lot of that comes from Venturini kind of playing a little bit of maybe team orders. The 7.5 comes from crashes. We always love crashes, and great on-track racing. Now, a lot of people really slagged the ARCA draft package. That 2021 race at Daytona was not that good. That's why I said this year's race was better than last year's race. That 2021 race at Talladega was way better, and we had less cars. It was way better. We had a great finish. It was amazing. I will say that race was amazing. And I believe we were setting ourselves up for the exact same thing if the caution had not come out. If that caution had not come out with 5 laps to go, I guarantee you we would have had one heck of a finish. We also probably would have had a huge wreck as well. In case you guys are wondering, unfortunately, the points have not been posted on arcaracing.com yet, but through the full-time drivers, obviously you guys can pinpoint that, the top 10 in points as well as obviously the top 10 in the field. But for you guys, I've actually managed to get the full-time driver points as we see it right now. So the drivers who are actually running the whole season as announced. Now, again, it is not confirmed yet by Greg Van Alst if he's running it, so I did not include him in the list. But as of right now, our full-time driver points that we know are running the whole season, Daniel Dye right now leads. If this is by full-time points, not by the points from Daytona, full-time points. Daniel Dye is in first with 41 points. Tony Breidinger is in second. Yes, she's second place. Right now in full-time points, Tony Breidinger is in second with 35 minus 6. Raja Caruth is third, minus 8. Amber Balkin is fourth, minus 13. And Nick Sanchez is down in fifth, minus 17. That is going to be a huge gap for Nick Sanchez to close. With ARCA fields not being, big enough to really gain over 17 points, that could be a big gap. And it might take Sanchez almost half the season to even get close to being back in the hunt for the championship. If Brad Smith, obviously, then after that would be a 6th place driver. Our owners' standings after that. Our owner standings after that, of course, Venturini Motorsports in first with the 20 team, the 15 of Venturini Motorsports in second, GMS 43 in third, Empire Racing in fourth, 29, and 55, fifth Venturini in fifth. Now, of course, why the owner points are so important? It's the top 20 at the end of the season who get an ARCA bonus. So, and it's regardless of full-time teams. If that team only runs 5 races, but they're in the top 20, they are part of the bonus. So that's why you want to run as many races as you can, even if it's a start and park effort, because you want to be in that top 20. And of course, the Owners' Championship is the main source of payouts for ARCA. And the reason why I kept saying on my Twitter that this crash really, really hurts the KBM team, like I just said, Venturini right now, Drew Deller finished 19th. They will earn 25 points from this event. Right now, the 18 KBM team is 24 points behind. That is a lot. That is a lot of points to make up. Now, I know we got 19 races left, but that is a lot of points to make up, especially with field sizes not being really big enough to gain that many points very quickly. So it does make you a little concerning. How many points can Sammy Smith earn back for the team at Phoenix? Or will a Venturini car just pull away even further? So not only do we really have an interesting Drivers' Championship battle, we have a very, very interesting Owners' Championship battle as well. That, of course, will be monitoring the entire season. Moth in the chat, will Andy J go full-time? No. Unfortunately, Andy J does not have the money to go full-time. I would expect him at all the big tracks in Bristol this season, but I would not expect Andy J to do more than about 10 races. So overall, my final thoughts for Daytona is this. Good race. Meh. Okay finish. Okay finish. We'll go with okay rather than may. Okay finish. The broadcast, in my opinion, gets a D. Not because of the announcers, because of the actual broadcast. Phil Parsons, one of the best damn commentators we've ever seen. That's a fact. Chase Briscoe, great insight from a former ARCA champ. Jamie Little, not the best, but always room for improvement, and I'm really liking that she's a lot better than last year. We know that. There's just those little minor things we want her to work on, and then she herself can hopefully be one day a full-time commentator and take ARCA into the future. Boy, what a long review. What a fun review. ARCA's here, man, for 2022. And for a lot of people that are here to bury the series, well, I'm here to tell you guys that they're a bunch of idiots. And I think ARCA 2022 is really going to open up some more eyes. We just need to get some more eyes on the sport. Toyota might be dominant, but hey, don't count out that GMS Chevy. And of course, in terms of the Fords, well, there's not many of them out there, but always count on Andy Jankowiak for feeling one. As for the championship picks, I really don't know who to pick for the championship right now. My pick was Sanchez. Well, as far back as he is, I'm still going to stay with Sanchez. But, man, it looks like Daniel Dye is really going to be tough to beat. Raja Karuth, again, being that many points behind, only 8 points behind, that's gainable. But I think the second race of the season, as Moff said in the chat, guys, right now with what Alex Clubb said, Phoenix is expected to have a full field, 36 cars, just like how we did last year. And if you blow that race too, where if you finish like worse than 15th, that could really end your season, because likelihood is we might not have bigger fields in about 20 to 25 cars the rest of the season. So, again, this is going to be an ARCA season that I really hope you guys will join in with me. I think post, we are still under – we currently technically are still under the pandemic. Set in the pandemic. But post-COVID, obviously, this is probably the best season ARCA will have. 2020, the fields were a joke, but it was understandable. It was because of COVID. People had to stay home, cut costs, all that. 2021, we were still recovering. But now we're in 2022. We're building back up, and I really think we're going to see some good field sizes, some good on-track action, and I really think ARCA is going to shock a lot of people this season. And I hope you guys are here for me with that. I don't really know how to end the show. I got to get an ending sequence. But thank you guys for joining me as always on the ARCA Racing Podcast. I love doing this every week with you guys. I'm happy we're in our second season. And, well, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break. March 11th. We'll see you guys on March 11th for the ARCA race, the ARCA Series and ARCA West Series combination race on March 11th at Phoenix Raceway for the General Tire 150. Unfortunately, we will not have an ARCA Racing podcast next week, but we will probably come on here and do something fun for you guys anyway, like maybe an ARCA Racing Backmarker News episode. Who knows? Anyway, it's we're just past 56 minutes here. You guys have a good rest of your night. Again, check out arcaracing.com for all post-ARCA Racing outlets and articles. Follow myself on Start and Park on Twitter. Follow ARCA Racing, follow Brad Smith. You guys know the drill. And we'll see you guys next time on the ARCA Racing Podcast. So long, guys.